Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready to dive deep.
Always.
Awesome. So today we're tackling How Will You Measure Your Life by Clayton Christensen. This book, it really got me thinking.
Yeah, it's pretty thought-provoking.
It is applying business principles to our lives.
Yeah.
Like how do we find fulfilling work? How do we navigate those unexpected turns? And ultimately, what really matters.
It's a unique approach, for sure. You wouldn't think business strategy would apply to, personal life, but he makes it work.
Yeah, he totally does. One of the first things that hit me was his emphasis on finding work that doesn't feel like work. I mean, we spend so much of our lives working.
Right. It might as well be something we enjoy.
Exactly. And he challenges this idea that a big paycheck equals job satisfaction, like been there, done that, wasn't happy.
It's more about finding work that motivates you intrinsically, right?
Yeah. I've had jobs that paid well, but I was like clock watching all day. Then others where I was so into it, I'd lose track of time. Those were the fulfilling ones, even if the pay wasn't top dollar. It's like that saying, find a job you love and you'll never work a day in your life. Have you experienced that?
Oh, totally. I think most of us have at some point. And that's where Christensen brings in Hertzberg's motivation theory. Hertzberg found that real job satisfaction comes from things like engaging work, recognition, responsibility, and feeling like you're growing.
So it's about those intrinsic rewards, not just the external stuff, right?
Exactly. Purpose, accomplishment, that feeling you're making a difference.
Makes sense. But how do we figure out what those motivation factors are for us? Like, do we just know, or is there a process?
Good question. It's probably a bit of both. There are things you naturally gravitate towards, find energizing, but it's also about paying attention, self-reflection, what really gets you going in your work.
So it's not a one-time thing. Oh, I figured it out. Done.
Yeah.
It's more like an ongoing check-in, right?
Yeah, careers change, we change. What motivated us 5 years ago might not be what motivates us now. It's about being aware of those shifts, adjusting if needed.
Okay, so find work that aligns with what motivates us. Got it.
hmm
But then life happens, right? We make plans. Things don't always go as expected. How do we balance those goals with being open to unexpected opportunities?
That's where Christensen's idea of deliberate strategy versus emergent opportunities comes in. He actually uses his own career path as an example. He wanted to be an editor for a newspaper, ended up in consulting, then entrepreneurship, then academia. Not exactly a straight line.
Yeah, but he didn't just drift around, right? There was intention there.
Right, that's the deliberate strategy part. But he was also open to recognizing and seizing those emergent opportunities that popped up along the way.
So have a direction, but be flexible, adapt as you go.
Exactly. And that's where discovery-driven planning becomes so important. Not rigidly sticking to a plan, but testing your assumptions. Is this path really viable?
Like constantly gathering information, making adjustments based on what you learn. Kind of like the scientific method hypothesis, experiment, analyze.
Precisely. He uses a great example from Disney. Huge success with theme parks in California, Florida, Tokyo. But their park outside of Paris initially struggled.
Why was that?
They made some bad assumptions based on their previous successes, didn't account for cultural differences, preferences of Parisian visitors.
Thought what worked in one place would automatically work in another.
Yep. That's why discovery-driven planning is so crucial. Helps you avoid costly mistakes by testing those assumptions, getting real-world data before going all in.
Makes me think about my own career plans. What assumptions am I making? What tests could I run? This is giving me a lot to think about.
It's a valuable exercise for everyone, I think. Are we clinging to outdated beliefs? Are there small experiments we could try to get more information?
Small experiments, I like that. Doesn't have to be a huge life-changing leap.
Right. Could be talking to someone in your field, taking a short course to explore a new skill.
Gathering information to make better choices. Okay, so fulfilling work, open to opportunities. But what about the rest of life, like relationships? We can have the best career in the world, but if our personal lives are a mess.
You're hitting on a key point, and Christensen talks about this, the idea of good money versus bad money in relationships.
Good money versus bad money. Okay, I'm intrigued.
So he argues that investing time and energy early on in our relationships is like making small, strategic investments, good money investments. These small, consistent efforts, they have much better returns over time than trying to fix things later with huge efforts, which he calls bad money.
So like preventative maintenance for a relationship.
Exactly. It's about nurturing those connections consistently, small gestures of love, kindness, support.
It makes sense. When I've put in that effort, those relationships have thrived. But when I've let things slide, it's been harder to reconnect, like trying to fix things with bad money after the fact.
Exactly. Strong relationships take consistent effort, and it's much easier to do that by making those good money investments early on. Small, everyday deposits make a difference.
I love that analogy. Good money investments in relationships. So what do those actually look like in practice?
Well, it can be simple things. Setting aside dedicated time for loved ones, really being present when you're with them, expressing your appreciation, helping out when they need it.
Not grand gestures, but those small, consistent actions.
Exactly. Building trust, strengthening bonds over time.
You know, the book tells this cautionary tale about a guy named Steve. Super successful in his career, but ended up lonely, estranged from his family.
Yeah.
Focused so much on work that he neglected those personal relationships.
A classic example of prioritizing one area of life to the detriment of others, and realizing the cost of that imbalance too late.
It reminds us that achievements can feel hollow if you don't have those strong relationships.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance.
Okay, so fulfilling work, being open to opportunities, investing good money in our relationships. How do we tie it all together? How do we even define a life well lived? Success can mean different things to different people.
Absolutely. And that's where Christensen's framework for defining purpose comes in. He breaks it down into three parts: likeness, commitment, and metrics.
Likeness, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Is that kind of like a vision for who we want to become?
Yeah, great way to put it. Our values, character, aspirations, envisioning our ideal selves, and then making choices that align with that vision.
Not just what we achieve, but who we are at our core, and the commitment piece.
That's about dedicating ourselves to living those values, pursuing those aspirations, turning vision into action.
Okay, so we have a vision and we're committed to it. What about the metrics part? How do we measure whether we're actually living a meaningful life?
This is where it gets interesting because Christensen's idea of metrics isn't about income, status, possessions.
Okay, tell me more.
He says our true metrics should focus on the impact we've had on others, how we contribute to the world, not just what we achieve for ourselves.
Wow. Not about accolades, but the difference we make in the lives of others. Powerful.
It's about leaving the world better than we found it. Our metrics should reflect that.
How do we determine what those should be? What questions should we be asking ourselves?
That's where the work begins. Deep self-reflection, honest conversations about values, passions, the legacy we want to leave.
This is heavy stuff. It's not just setting goals for career or financial success. It's about purpose, making a positive impact.
It is heavy stuff, but also empowering. Once you define those metrics, it's like a compass guiding your decisions.
A North Star.
Yeah.
Helping you navigate life's complexities, make choices aligned with your deepest values.
Exactly. Living with intention, not just reacting.
Okay, we've got this framework.
Hmm.
Likeness, commitment, metrics. But how do we put it into practice?
First step, I think, is getting clear on that likeness, who you want to be, what values you want to live by, what impact you want to make.
Starting with the end in mind, that vision.
Once you have that picture, you can start making choices that are consistent with it, working towards it.
Life throws curveballs, though. We make mistakes, face setbacks, get tempted to take shortcuts. How do we stay on track when things get tough?
That's where the commitment comes in, making that choice to live by your values even when it's hard.
It can be a daily struggle, right? We're surrounded by messages telling us to prioritize success, achievement, material things.
Absolutely. That's why it's so important to be intentional, to check in with yourself, make sure you're still aligned with your likeness and your metrics.
It's an ongoing process, not a one-time decision, constantly evaluating, adjusting.
It's about being mindful, deliberate about the life we're creating.
I think a lot of us get caught in the day-to-day and forget to ask, am I living in a way that feels truly meaningful?
It's so easy to get swept away by the current, but Christensen's framework gives us that tool to step back, take stock, and make conscious choices.
This is resonating with me. Before we move on, Christensen talks about the dangers of just this once thinking. Those small compromises that can lead to bigger ethical lapses.
Oh, absolutely. That's crucial to remember. We justify those small things. It's just this once. It won't happen again.
But the danger is they chip away at our integrity, make it easier to justify bigger things down the road.
Right, exactly. It's a slippery slope.
He uses the example of the trader at Barings Bank. Small mistake, tried to cover it up, led to a cascade of bad decisions that brought down the entire bank.
Wow, yeah. It's sobering. Those small choices, they can have huge consequences.
Integrity isn't built overnight. It's those consistent choices, even when no one's watching.
It's about accountability to our values, even when it's tough.
It makes me think about times I've been tempted to cut corners. Those choices can have a ripple effect.
It's a reminder for all of us, ties back to defining our likeness, committing to that vision.
Okay, so fulfilling work, open to opportunities, good relationships, defining our metrics, guarding against compromises. A lot to digest.
It is a lot, but it's all so important. Christensen gives us a really helpful framework to navigate these big questions.
So where do we go from here? How do we apply all this to our own lives?
That's the big question. And it's different for everyone, but spending some time reflecting on these concepts is a good start.
Taking the time to internalize these ideas, figure out what resonates with us.
Yeah, what are your motivation factors for work? What assumptions are you making about your career, and what small experiments could you try?
What about those good money investments in your relationships? What small things can you do to strengthen those bonds?
And most importantly, what does a life well lived mean to you? What are your metrics for success?
Big questions, but worth thinking about. Because as Christensen says, how will you measure your life? It's a question we all have to grapple with.
And the answers we come up with will shape the lives we create. It really is about taking ownership, not just letting life happen to you,
Yeah,
shaping the kind of person you want to be. That's where likeness becomes so powerful.
totally.
Yeah.
Thinking back on my own life, the most fulfilling times weren't always about, like, checking off a big accomplishment. It's been the smaller moments.
Yeah.
Helping a friend through a tough time, seeing a project I worked on actually make a difference. Even just like a deep conversation that changes my perspective.
Those are the things that stick with you. And I think that's what Christensen's getting at with those metrics. Not external scores, but those internal measures that impact the fulfillment.
Makes me wonder, how do we avoid comparing our metrics to other people's? Falling into that trap, keeping up with the Joneses.
It's a constant challenge. We see all these images, these stories of other people's success.
It's like we're playing different games, different rules, but trying to compare scores doesn't make sense.
Exactly. That's why defining your own likeness, your own metrics is so important. Your definition of success aligned with your values, not someone else's.
So how do we tune out that noise and focus on our own internal compass?
It's an effort for sure. Being mindful of what we consume, the social media, the conversations, the books, even the podcasts.
Social media, the comparison game is strong there. You scroll through everyone's highlight reels, and it's easy to feel like you're not enough.
We've all been there. But remember, it's just a snapshot, not the full picture. Everyone has challenges, struggles, even if they don't post about them.
So be more selective about the information. Be more critical of what we internalize. Maybe even take breaks from social media.
Absolutely. Protect your mental space. Don't let those comparisons hijack your self-worth.
It makes me think about what Christensen calls marginal thinking. Those small compromises, they can have a big impact over time. Like the boiling frog, right?
Yeah.
If you slowly increase the heat, the frog won't jump out.
Powerful analogy. We justify those small things. Just a little white lie won't hurt anyone. Just a small bribe, it's how business is done. But over time, they erode our integrity.
It's like in the book, those students who started cheating on small assignments, then they're cheating on bigger and bigger things. It becomes a habit.
It's scary how easily those patterns form. We're on autopilot, not thinking about the long-term consequences.
How do we break those patterns? How do we develop that awareness, the discipline to catch ourselves?
It's not easy. But honesty about our values, setting clear boundaries, what are we not willing to compromise on, no matter what?
Like a personal code of conduct.
Exactly. And we'll make mistakes, that's part of it. The key is learning from them, using them as opportunities to grow.
Compassion for ourselves, but also accountability.
And surrounding ourselves with the right people.
It's like you said earlier, good money investments in relationships. It's not just nurturing the connections, but choosing to be around people who bring out our best, who support us becoming who we want to be.
Absolutely. The people we spend time with, they influence our choices, our behavior. If they're cutting corners, compromising their values, it makes it harder for us to stay true to ours.
You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? Choose your inner circle wisely.
Wise words. They'll impact the life you create.
Okay, so defining our likeness, our metrics, being mindful of the messages we consume, guarding against marginal thinking, having a strong support system. What about when we feel lost, uncertain? What if we don't have that clear vision yet?
Happens to a lot of people. Important to remember, figuring out our likeness, our purpose, it's a journey, not a destination. Exploration, discovery.
So it's okay to not have the answers right now. Experiment, try things, adjust as we go.
Be patient with ourselves. Figuring out what truly matters, what kind of impact we want to make, takes time.
Like we're constantly evolving, and our likeness might evolve too.
Exactly. And that's a good thing. Growing, learning, becoming more ourselves.
I like that. Takes the pressure off.
It does. Embrace the journey, trust the process.
So for someone feeling lost, where do they start? What's the first step?
Start paying attention. What are you drawn to? What energizes you? What problems do you want to solve?
Tapping into those interests, passions,
And don't be afraid to experiment. Try things, take risks, see what feels right.
step outside that comfort zone.
Talk to people doing work you admire, living lives you find inspiring.
Gather information, different perspectives.
Exactly. And be patient. Be kind to yourself. It's a journey, not a race.
Love that. Trust the process.
And it's okay to change your mind. What felt right 5 years ago might not feel right today. It's all part of it.
This has been so insightful. We've covered so much. Fulfilling work, unexpected opportunities, investing in relationships, defining those metrics. There's one more takeaway from Christensen that I think ties it all together.
I agree. It's a big one.
What is it?
Humility.
Humility. How does that fit in?
Christensen says it's essential for learning and growth. Being open to new ideas, admitting when we're wrong, seeking feedback.
Recognizing we don't have all the answers, we can always learn more.
Exactly. And it's essential for relationships.
Yeah.
Listening, seeing things from other perspectives, admitting when we've messed up.
Putting ego aside,
Yeah.
focusing on connection, understanding.
And it's crucial for navigating setbacks, challenges, picking ourselves up after failure, learning, moving forward.
Resilience, grit.
Humility helps us see those setbacks as opportunities, not personal failings.
A shift in perspective.
It's much more empowering.
Absolutely. So how do we cultivate more humility? Are we born with it, or can we develop it?
A bit of both, I think. Some people are naturally more humble, but it's something we can all work on.
What are some practical steps?
Asking for help when we need it,
Letting go of that need to be perfect, to have it all figured out.
being open to feedback, even if it's tough to hear,
Hearing different perspectives, learning from our mistakes,
celebrating the successes of others.
letting go of competition, genuinely being happy for them.
Their success doesn't diminish our own.
We're all in this together, learning, growing, supporting each other.
I love that. Collaboration, community, not just competition.
This has been such a great conversation. We've only just scratched the surface.
So much wisdom in that book.
As we wrap up, let's circle back to that central question. How will you measure your life? Daunting, but empowering.
We have the power to choose how we want to live, what legacy we leave.
Taking ownership, creating a meaningful, fulfilling life.
Start by defining those metrics that matter most. What do you want to be remembered for? What impact do you want to make?
And make choices that align with that every day.
Living with intention.
So for our listeners, as they ponder these big questions, what's one piece of advice you'd leave them with?
Be kind to yourself. This journey, it can be tough. No right or wrong answers.
Embrace the process. Trust that we'll figure it out.
And it's okay to change your mind, adjust course, keep evolving.
This has been so insightful, inspiring. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us.
It's been my pleasure.
And to everyone listening, I hope this has inspired you to measure your life in a way that truly matters.
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep striving to make a difference.
Thanks for listening. And to our listeners, I hope this got you thinking too, about your own likeness, maybe those good money investments in your relationships. This whole thing, it's definitely shifted my perspective.
Yeah, it's not about having all the answers right away, right? It's more like starting to ask those big questions. What motivates you? What impact do you want to have? What kind of person do you want to be?
Those are tough questions, but even starting to think about them.
It's a good starting point. It puts you on a path, you know? You start making choices differently, not just reacting, but thinking about the bigger picture.
So what's the most important first step? If someone's feeling inspired, but maybe a bit overwhelmed, where should they start?
You know, I think it comes back to that likeness idea. If you can even get a little clearer on the kind of person you want to be, your values, the life you want, that's powerful.
It's like a blueprint, even if it's just a rough sketch.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be this huge, complex vision. Start small. Pick one area of your life, work, relationships, personal growth. Ask yourself, what's one small change I could make today that would be a good money investment?
Taking action, even a small step.
It all adds up over time. That's what's so cool about Christensen's message. It's not about this huge life overhaul. It's about making those choices day after day that shape you.
We all have that power, right? To create a life that's meaningful, fulfilling, true to ourselves.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it.
It is. It's like you're not just along for the ride, you're driving. You choose where you want to go.
And hopefully enjoy the ride along the way.
Well said. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. It's been great exploring these ideas with you.
My pleasure. And to everyone listening, I hope this has given you some things to think about.
And remember, it's never too late to start making those good money investments in yourself, in your relationships, your future.
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep striving to make a difference.
Thanks for listening.